What's up, listeners out there? You are listening to All Burgundy and Gold, everything powered by the Urban Sports Scene and Fox Sports Radio 96.9 FM and 1340 AM, Hopewell, Virginia. I'm Mo, and I'm joined today by my co-hosts, Glen and George. What's up, fellas?
Yo, what's up, man? How you feeling?
Man, we feeling good, man.
Doing well today.
You know, what about you, George?
I'm glad I made it to here, and we're doing this podcast, and I can't wait for Sunday, but I'm just glad I made it to this podcast. I've been looking forward to this all day.
There it is, man.
We got a lot to talk about, baby.
We got a lot to talk about, man.
Yes,
Before we get to that, let's get to the particulars out there, listeners and fans. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast platforms. Just search All Burgundy and Gold, everything. That's E and 3 R's, okay? With an E and 3 R's. Also tweet us at ABG_everything, E with 3 R's. And hit us up on IG and TikTok at ABG everything. Go ahead and make sure y'all subscribe to our All Burgundy and Gold Everything YouTube channel as well. We are also streaming live on the Urban Sports Scene X account. That's Twitter for those who don't know what X is. But hold up, guys. It's time for the pregame. Today, we'll talk about the confidence that fans should have in Marcus Mariota if he starts against the Chicago Bears. We'll also talk about the return of former Washington defensive end Montez Sweat returning to play against the Commanders since he's been traded out of here last season. Finally, we'll discuss Jamin Davis being released by the Commanders earlier this week. Glen.
Yo, here we go. Let's go here. Coach Quinn said that Jaden Daniels is day-to-day, right? He added in his press conference that they'll be smart with Jaden this week, right? Mariota looked good against the Panthers last week. The Commanders are playing a tough Bears defense, tough Bears, not only tough Bears defense, but a tough Bears team on this Sunday, right? What are your comfort level with Mariota starting against the Bears? George, we'll start with you.
My comfort level is high. This is a guy who's running the same, essentially a similar system. I can't say the exact same because they were not as high tempo. They're not as high tempo in Washington as they were in Oregon because nobody would be. They were because Oregon was running the blur at the time. But a lot of the air raid offense that Cliff Kingsbury runs is the stuff that Marcus Mariota ran at Oregon when he was a Heisman winner. And I'll be honest, I don't think he's ever looked as comfortable in the NFL, even when he was doing well in Tennessee as he did this past Sunday. Yet, and of course, all aside, Carolina's terrible. I get all that. But that system is comfortable. He's very comfortable in that system. And we're the fastest tempo team in the league, which he's also very comfortable with. So I think more than most of your backup quarterbacks, my confidence level in him is high if he has to play on Sunday.
Mo, what you got?
I mean, I think Mariota is a veteran. I think he's had experience as a starter. He's experienced as a backup. I think, like George said, the system does fit him. I think he was brought here on purpose. I know a lot of people joke that they didn't want to ever see him on the field, but this was a possibility that we knew was going to happen, especially when you have a quarterback that's the frame of the starting quarterback Jaden Daniels is, and the running ability is always the scare that most people have. Marcus Mariota being a veteran, being in multiple systems, but this being a system that he's super familiar with, even if it's new to him, the concepts are probably familiar. And he has the ability himself with being mobile and not being afraid to, use his legs and extend plays and at least have some kind of intermediate range accuracy. So I think it bodes well. I think he'll put up a formidable fight. It's not going to look like Jaden Daniels, but it was serviceable against Carolina, and we'll see how serviceable it will be on Sunday versus the Chicago Bears, because I do think they're a greater quality team.
I had the opportunity to watch him live on Sunday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what you guys saw on TV, but I'm going to tell you what I saw live. I saw him being late in a lot of passes, right? I saw a lot of guys running down the field where he could have hit him deep, but he's looking for his safety valve, Terry McLaurin and different guys, right? Ben Stitt at one time was wide open down the field, and Marcus didn't pull the trigger. But the offensive line gave him enough time to correct that behavior, right? It gave him enough time to make himself right. It could have went south. But he also came into the game with a Washington Commanders team that had a lead at 10-0.
Mm-hmm.
A Commanders team that was the defense was balling themselves out. My comfort level, I'm worried because it's still Marcus Mariota. Which means a lot of factors that go into play, right? How healthy is Brian Robinson? Can Austin Eckler? Can the running game be effective? Can the offensive line still block and keep Marcus Mariota upright, right? And make him, and Cliff Kingsbury can call the game for Marcus to keep him within his wheelhouse, right? To do what he does well. And then can you get to keep the Bears defense, right, from Montez Sweat and other guys from pass rushing? We saw a couple of weeks ago when you played a tough Baltimore Raven defense, how this offensive line had struggled a little bit and had trouble. The Bears defense is just as good. So I'm worried a little bit. If I had to put a level on it, I'm not at a level 10, but I'm about level 5 or 6 worried about Marcus Mariota in this Washington Commanders offense and how well and effective they can run the football to get the ball out of his hands quickly and put the balls in some of your other playmakers.
Okay.
Marcus as a starter doesn't have a great record, right? He's 43-48.
That was the only other thing the only apprehension I had was that now they have film on them. They know the expectancies. Like you said, you saw late throws, right? You saw the offensive line protect them. That rhythm, that pace, that's not the same with Jaden. So it's going to be interesting to see. I know when they get tape on you, things change a little bit, and that's why typically new guys that come in to replace an injured quarterback or start for the first week always have a really, really good game because the game plan is typically tailored to them, i.e. Andy Dalton the day after Bryce Young was benched, and i.e. Marcus Mariota caught fire in that second and third quarter where, a lot of completions in a row. So speaking of the Chicago Bears, former Washington Commanders first-round draft pick in the 2019 draft, and now Chicago Bears Pro Bowl defensive end Montez Sweat returns to Landover to take on his former team for the first time since last year's midseason trade. You know he will be hyped. Will this team be able to slow him down? Glenn.
I think so. I think he'll be hyped, but I think the team will be able to slow him down, right? I think with the offensive linemen that the Washington Commanders have and the way they do their running backs and they can chip on the outside, I think they will be able to slow Montez Sweat down. Remember, some of these, and so I think Montez Sweat is one of the better pass rushers in the league, but I think Cliff Kingsbury and the offensive line have done a tremendous job this year keeping Jaden Daniels upright. They're having to give it up that many sacks. This time last year, we were talking about the sack record being taken care of, right? We're talking about how the sack record was getting ready to be broken. But again, new offensive coordinator, new offensive line, the way that they do things, the way that they get the ball out their hands quickly. And I know I said it last week, a few minutes ago, that Marcus Mariota holds the ball a lot last week. I don't think that's going to be the case this week because he's been in practice with Cliff Kingsbury, right? He knows that he had potential to be the starter. So they know the game plan for this offense is to get the ball out his hands quickly, to get it to your Terry McLaurin's, to get it to your Jamin Browns, what we saw last week. Get it to your Ben Stennetts, right? And your Zach Ertz. Those guys, or your Austin Eckler. Even with Jaden Daniels, what we saw with Cliff Kingsbury, he was getting the ball out of his hands quickly, right? He was getting the ball out of his hands too. So one of these quick playmakers, or he was doing it with his feet. We're not asking the 30-year-old Marcus Mariota to do it with his feet. We're asking Marcus Mariota to do it with his hands, and which means it will kind of alleviate the whole Montez Sweat situation if you get the ball out the hands quick and he doesn't get any sacks.
George.
For my view of it is, one thing you can always do to take the sting out of a pass rusher is run the ball at him. And the Bears have struggled in run defense this year. So I would expect Washington to run the ball right at Montez Sweat and try to wear him down that way and take some of that juice out of that pass rush. And I'm sure a lot of what Glenn said is true too, that they're going to chip him, that maybe Cornelius Lucas, having worked against him in practice, might have a few things that he can do to him and that he can tell Brandon Coleman to do if Brandon Coleman's out there playing. So I'm sure Sweat's going to get at least one sack because he even though he doesn't have as many sacks as he was getting when he first got to Chicago in the last season, his pressure rating is pretty high. He's getting near the quarterback, which is something he's always been good at, is getting pressure on the quarterback. So for me, I think he'll get one, but I think they're going to find a way to not let it be like, a party in the backfield like we've seen with other, defensive ends in the past.
No, I'd have to agree. I do think that his strength is in the run game, though. I think he used to contain very, very well for the Commanders. He was never like a high sack number guy, but he does play the run also. And I think it comes down to whether the Commanders have a lead in this game or not. To go back to Glen's point earlier, right? Glenn's point earlier was that Marcus Mariota came in the game with a lead and had some cushion. But now, if this team goes down, does Marcus Mariota play well from coming from behind, where he's still delivering the ball, like he's keeping up pace with the Chicago Bears? They're starting to find their rhythm, right? Because all their receivers are back. Keenan Allen's back, had 2 touchdowns last week. Cole Kmet has had a big game this year where he's gone off. That the weapons are starting to flow, and they're starting to be somebody different every week based off of how teams are playing them. Caleb is starting to see the field, and he's starting to have some of those magician-like plays that we saw in school. So he's steadily improving, even though JD has been winning the Rookie of the Week awards, even though Caleb should have won it last week. I don't know how he didn't win it with 4 touchdowns last week. That's neither here or there, right? Like, it's going to depend if this team can play is comfortable playing from behind with Marcus Mariota, because then the Bears get to pin their ears back. And even though they're not the best at stopping the run, that aspect in the pass defense is really good for that team. They got a lot of young players in the secondary, and they have Kevin Byard back there. Linebackers are flowing, and they have a plethora of pass rushers that have been getting to the quarterback. So it'll be interesting for sure. Glenn.
Yeah, one thing else I want to add to that, Montez Sweat situation. He does get a lot of pressure. He does the same thing as George mentioned. He's doing the same thing in Chicago that he did in Washington. Get pressure, but don't create sacks, right? And he doesn't capitalize on the sacks. I think that he only has 2.5 this year.
That's correct.
I believe 2.5 in 7 games with 7-game mark, 6-game mark. So to me, the production, what the Bears paid for, I don't think they're getting right now, right? When he first went over to Chicago, he was that sack machine. The first 3-4 games, he was able to maneuver out. Now, I think teams are starting to figure him out. I can't remember if Coleman, I got to check to see if Coleman is off of a concussion protocol or not. I like to see that matchup as well, Montez Sweat and Coleman. But I think Sweat I don't think he's much of a factor. He won't be much of a factor in this game. I think the Washington offensive line will do well enough to alleviate Montez Sweat. And, of course, he's going to be pumped up. But let's be honest, this is not the same team that got rid of him, right? It's not the same regime. No. It's not the same regime. It's not the same team that he was playing for when he got let go of his duty or got released. So he can make it up in his head as what he wants to do. But I think this Washington offensive line has proven week in and week out, except for against the Ravens, that they can handle what most things are being thrown at them.
Absolutely.
And they handle Myles Garrett. Can we be on? They handle Myles Garrett, and I think Myles Garrett is way better, in my opinion, than Montez Sweat.
No, that's a fact. That's a fact. Speaking of
defensive ends,
speaking of former Commanders, the Reds. You see, you got me saying that. You almost made me call them their name. The Commanders.
It's the Redskins. It's always gonna be the Redskins. It was hard. It was hard to take hail to the Commanders this week when they put the song. It's hard, but I understand.
The Commanders, guys, this past week have released former first rounder from the 2001 draft, Jamin Davis. What are our thoughts on this release? George, you're up first.
I feel a little bit disappointed because they asked Jamin Davis to play a completely new position in the preseason. It looked like at the end of preseason he was starting to get it. And then he actually made a few plays in that Tampa game when hardly anybody else on the defense made any. So I was like, okay. I mean, I remember what I said at the time. I said, I hope we see more snaps for Jamin Davis because he's showing some aptitude here, and let's give him a chance to develop. And then I think he was inactive for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then he barely got any snaps. So I kind of feel like, yes, he'd been here for 3 years, but you have to remember that was Jack Del Rio and that abysmal staff that he had. And holding that against him, while understandable, can at times be a little bit unfair. And I just wish he'd have gotten more of a fair go. I understand that we got a lot of options at defensive end, and we got guys like Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler Jr. And Dante Fowler Jr., had a huge breakout. I wish we'd have given Jamin Davis more of a chance because he showed something that told me that he was actually really working hard and trying to get it. Because I know that had been a bit of a knock against him, is that people felt like he didn't really work hard first 3 years that he was here. But it's the way that a lot of high Rivera picks have gone. And so I am disappointed that he's released, but at the same time, it again puts another spotlight on what an absolutely horrific job this front office did at drafting in those 4 years. And again, that particular day, I and many other people were pounding the table for guys like Christian Darrisaw who were on the board. And we ended up with Jamin Davis, and unfortunately he goes down as being a bust at this point.
Glenn.
You're muted, Glenn. Unmute yourself.
I'm glad I'm muted it because I said Stevie Wonder saw this coming.
Nah.
Right? You knew this was coming. No one, even in the project that was happening this summer with Ryan Kerrigan, and then when they start bringing other defensive ends in, Jamin Davis began to lose his place. When you start bringing true defensive ends in, who played defensive end in college, who played defensive end on other teams in the NFL, it's very rarely do you see a guy who moves to another position in the NFL and excels, right? It was a project. Obata came back. As soon as Obata came back, what did they do? They put Jamin Davis on the injured reserve list or do not play list, right? He didn't play, right? They put him on the list. That should have been, hey, tell Jamin, he's not injured, right? No, inactive list, excuse me. You're not injured. You're not hurt, but they made you inactive. Guess what? When you're inactive and they don't need you, it's about that time that you're getting ready to get put out the door, right? It's about that time you're getting ready to leave. You're not going to put you on the practice squad, make too much money, right? They got young guys. You don't need you at linebacker because, again, you have the Frankie Lou's of the world. You have the Bobby Wagners of the world, right? He's not going to put you there, right? It could be Jamie could have learned there, but whatever it is, he don't fit as a linebacker in the WIT system, right? They never even tried him at linebacker in the WIT system. It's like, we want you to be a defensive end. And it goes what you said again, George. Those Ron Rivera players are getting put out of town. Right, and they're spoiled goods at this point, right? Unless you are Sam Cosmi or one of these guys,
John Bates,
right? They don't need you, And I like Jamin, right? I know there's Woolies boy and everything. I like Jamin. I think Jamin could have been a good athlete, but they didn't use him right. Del Rio didn't put him there, the way he needed to be used the first couple years in Washington. And he just never be able to mature. And let's not forget he had some off the field trouble too. Let's not forget that, right? Maybe I wonder how much that really contributed because at the end of the day, I mean, look, we saw it. They signed a kicker, and then there was a word of trouble about him. He was out the door before camp even started. And even though he eventually got past it, and he's now kicking, I think it's for the Packers or the Vikings or whoever it is. Mm-hmm. Adam, this organization's not going to brook it, and and especially what he did was it going 115 and a 30 or whatever it was. That's not good. You're already on their list when they come into the building, right?
Yes.
So again, you dealing with all these things. Hey, somebody said in the chat, Paul said, "Is Forbes next?" I believe Forbes is next. Well, Forbes got an interception the other day, but I still think Forbes is on that list. Maybe that helped his confidence out, If Forbes can continue to have success like he had on Sunday, then maybe. But you don't play the Carolina Panthers every Sunday.
But I mean, that was kind of harsh how Jamin Davis goes and people are like, "Oh, Emmanuel Forbes is on the chopping block." It's like he just got a pick. He just had a decent game. It's like, can everybody take a breath and let the guy enjoy that for a moment?
He had a decent game, but again, people are fans wanted to see, can he have a decent game against, the AJ Browns of the world, right? Can he have a decent game against the CD Lambs of the world, right? If we ask
all
people
true.
Right now, can you
all true, but as Wole says, where's that smoke for St. Juice? Because he deserves it just as much.
Where's my man Jeremy at? St. Juice gets a smoke every time. Right? St. Juice gets smoke. We get St. Juice smoke, right? But St. Juice also wasn't the number 2 pick.
That is true.
St. Juice wasn't also a first round pick. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
So that is one of the things that. But Mo, your thoughts, man?
Man, I thought it was unfortunate, man. I was with George a little bit. Like, you're gonna give him a chance. You're not gonna give him a chance at his former position to show you something. I think that their mind was made up about him as a linebacker. You tell him you got to play a new position. He tries hard. With that, there's going to be some up and down success. You knew some roster moves, like you said, was going to change that outcome. But I like to see him. You know what I mean? I thought that he wasn't. I thought he was inactive because I thought they were trying to actively shop him, and they weren't trying to risk an injury to him. Me personally, because I knew that the trade window was coming. And I thought that them releasing him midweek after him not playing for 2 weeks was like, okay, nobody wanted to trade for him. They saw that his value was low. Like, let's cut bait right now. I'm pretty sure they tried to see if they can get something for him. So I was surprised about it all. Hope Jamin gets on his feet somewhere and finds a place that can use him, and he can try to make something out of his career.
Yeah. Go ahead, George.
I was going to say, I hope he can find a place that's got some really good defensive ends that he can learn behind, with a coaching staff that's going to give him some time to continue learning, continue developing. It would be great. It'd be like if he could end up on like Pittsburgh's practice squad and work with a staff like that. Because again, he showed aptitude. He had flashes. That he could be a decent, pass rush specialist defensive end. I really believe that if he's given the opportunity and he can learn, he can have time to work and develop at the position. And so I'm hoping he ends up somewhere like that or some other place that's got some really good defensive ends that he can learn off of.
Yeah, what we see is the rumors out there is that Baltimore is in the play for him as well as Carolina. So the places that Jamin Davis may land after his release or after waivers and all this other stuff is Baltimore. And I mean, going to that Baltimore room with Roquan Smith, and those guys, he could actually learn and be able to compete there. And I said he couldn't learn here. Figure here he had Kid Norton Jr., you had Bobby Wagner, you had Frankie Louvu, you had some of the great linebackers, some good linebackers. It just didn't work out. And for Jamin, I think Jamin this year, when he played, George, to your point, he had 13 tackles. He ended up with 1 for a loss. And I believe he even had a sack, if I'm not mistaken. But it wasn't good enough. And I still go back to this, and I say it. I really believe it was the switch to defensive end, the project, and the 2 reckless driving charges that Jamin Davis got was the reason that he is out of Washington right now. You have to be a model citizen. You got to do the things that's right. And what other way to set a tone with somebody if you're Dan Quinn than with a Jamin Davis, a guy who's been here with his organization for 4 years.
But the charges were prior to. You let him play DN for 5 weeks after the charges. Like
you did yes. You did let him play that, but you can talk about it, you can say about it. You let him play after that, but he did not perform. Right? Can we be honest? Everybody likes Jamin. Jamin did not perform to the level that he should have performed to if you're trying to stay on his team.
I'm with that, but let's not just. I'm just saying, let's not. Yeah. It seems like we're piling on the reckless driving situation. They don't got nothing. If you let him play for 5 weeks, after that, he did whatever he was supposed to do over the summer. He handled it. He's been nothing but model since the season started. That can be dropped, is what I'm saying.
Because,
yeah. But Man,
You know,
a lot's going on in Commanders Town, Commanders Nation. I mean, but I can't let y'all. I can't let y'all off the hook yet, man. I gotta. I gotta ask y'all. I gotta ask you all. What do you think the outcome of this game is going to be?
I'm
Before
giving
we
my
get off.
answer Sunday.
I mean,
I'm, I'm
go ahead.
waiting. I'm waiting to see the reports on certain people.
Okay. So we need to see the injury report.
I need to see an injury report.
Anything else we want to add?
I do
Well,
think this game should be more. I think this game shouldn't be a 4:25 game. I think they should flex the game to come on Sunday night and make this game the 8 o'clock game.
Oh, it's a 4:25 game.
yeah, it got flexed to the late window. It's supposed to be the number one game at 4:25 on CBS. I'm going
And
to check now. I'm
it's
going
It
to
gonna
is,
be
check
yeah.
now and see if
18.
it's on in my area because when I heard that, I was crossing my fingers and toes that it was going to be on where I am, so that I don't actually have to find the old. I don't have to find the old stream on the tablet, and I can actually watch it. And yes, it is. It is on in Southwest Florida.
Nah,
Yay!
it's the game of the week. If it's the game of the week, it's going to be the national game. That's why it's at
Yeah,
4:25. They want to showcase the first and second pick. Now Jaden
yeah.
just has to do his part and play.
And first guess on that. I think Jaden will play. I've felt that since he came out of the tunnel Sunday. I think if he was badly enough hurt that he couldn't play this coming week, I don't think you would have seen him on the sideline during the game.
I'm glad you took it there. I'm glad you took it there. What are your thoughts on that, Glenn?
I think he
What do
plays.
you think?
I think he plays. I think they wrap it up. I think he wants to play. Right. I don't think there's ever a problem with Jaden Daniels. I think it's his organization and this organization with Adam Peters, with Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury. Those guys are gonna have to make the decision. Do you want Jaden Daniels to play in the Chicago Bears game? How healthy is he? Because let's be honest. Can we really be honest? This city, and we talked a little bit about on Sunday, George. This city still has a stink from the RG3 2012 situation.
Yes.
Hello.
Right.
That's
No,
all I was going to say.
and we did it. And again, for those of you that didn't see it, it was sort of. I think it was much later in the post game video that we talked about it. But I think we addressed it fully, and I think Wole put up a reel of me talking about it that would sort of synthesize my thoughts. In general, I don't think it compares at all to what happened with Robert. And yes, you're right about the city's feeling about that, but it isn't the same. And again, I will be disappointed if Jaden doesn't play, but the fact that he was willing to listen to them on that and that they were the one that made the decision and didn't let the player make the decision is a good thing for the long term. And there's nothing wrong with being too cautious with a rookie in his first year,
Oh,
no matter what
absolutely.
your situation is in the standings.
There's no way I'm allowing Jaden to play.
Okay.
I said, there's no way. Listen, man, this organization has been waiting a long time to have a quarterback to cultivate. You finally got one, right? He hasn't even touched, he's the tip of the iceberg. That's not even, he's not even there yet. And he's playing this tremendous. Look at the spirit around the DMV. Look at the belief. 5-2 record after 7. No one had this team at 5-2.
Guilty. Not
No
me.
one. You're clear a game and a half of everybody in the division. Let's not rush this kid out there because I don't it could be like an oblique, it could be like a rib, we don't know if it's fractured. They're not giving us much information on it, right? And I think that it's not I don't think it's a fracture. I think we would have known that by now if it was a fracture. So I think it's one of these situations like the Derek Carr injury where your abdominal, your core muscle or something like that is, and because of the way that he went down, the way he got crunched upon, right? And then you saw the following run where he just gave himself up. It's it was a strain on that area, right? And it's the area that he's not going to be able to, he's going to have to protect it. People are worried about him. People are talking about him playing as if this is not something he can re-injure really easily. It can be re-injured whether by a hit, whether by him trying to throw the ball aggressively or against his body or, get contorted in a certain way. He gets landed upon. This is not something to play with where he ends up being out for an extended period of time and the season goes awry. And it's same old Commanders again. Give the kid an extra week to figure it out. Yes, I know everybody wants to see the first and the second pick play. That is not the concern of the Commanders, brass. The
That's not
concern
the
is to
goal.
make sure this team can go far. So let
And
this
Mo,
kid
I
heal
agree with
up.
you on that.
Let him heal up and let him go out there and showcase his best self, which he's been showcasing. Even if he does play, I don't want to mitigate it, Jaden Daniels. I don't want the people to see flaws in the game on tape that they can then come after later on in the season with the
Right.
risk of injury. You don't want the morale of this team to come down. You don't want the energy around this team to come down. You don't want that suppressed right now. Let that
And,
kid heal up.
and you don't want the fans to hold their breath every time he drops back, right? You don't
Exactly.
want every time you drop back, you holding your breath, or every time he has to design run or can't get out of bounds, and you holding your breath like, oh my goodness. You don't want
Exactly.
that. To me, that's why you have a backup quarterback, right? Sit the kid until he's healthy. It's not a one-on-one with Jaden Daniels. The game is the Chicago Bears and the Washington Commanders, not Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. They're part of the play. As a whole, if Jaden Daniel plays and doesn't look like himself and Washington goes 5-3, what are we saying? Or Jaden Daniel plays and get hurt worse. What's the conversation going to be like?
Exactly.
So here it is.
Exactly, Glenn.
You be safer with a young guy. Here it is. He hasn't practiced all week. He didn't practice Wednesday. He didn't practice Thursday, right? Let's be honest. He's not going to play this week because practicing Friday and again for the game, he got Friday and Saturday. No, go with Marcus Mariota. I think Hartwell is the third string quarterback, the backup. All right, activate him. Keep it moving. You got your starter. You got your backup. You got your running game. You got your Brian Robinson. You got your Austin Eckler. Let these guys run and let Jaden down. Because again, you're getting ready to go into division football, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're getting ready to go into this. You got the Chicago. You got the Philadelphia Eagles. You got the Dallas Cowboys twice. You got the Eagles twice. You got the Giants
Pittsburgh
again.
is coming. The
Pittsburgh
Giants
is
are
coming,
coming.
right? You want to win these games. Pittsburgh, a solid playoff team, right? Should win the NFC North or be in that conversation towards the end of the year. Russell Wilson playing well. You want that matchup, right? So again, I don't want to see Jaden Daniels this weekend, if you want to be honest. I want to see Marcus Mariota, right? I want to see Marcus this weekend, not Jaden.
That's a fact. That's a fact. If you asking me, I would not mess up none of the momentum that this team has going. None of the good juju that it has. It's been a little while. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I think protecting him against himself, because we've seen that he's had issues getting down. We've seen that he's going to extend the play. And if it's more of a muscle strain, core oblique type deal that we've seen, every pass he throws is going to be affected by that.
Mm.
At that point, you would probably rather it be fractured ribs, right? Because then all you're worried about is him getting hit.
Mm-hmm.
But like him throwing, even the throwing motion is going to cause some pain if it's the other type of injury.
Right.
So,
Like Todd said, we'll throw some of these questions up here. Like Todd said, look, for the first time we have responsible adults in control. I'm sure they'll make the right decision. Twitter beef with the Bears ain't worth it. Twitter beef with the Bears ain't worth it. Todd agrees with me. He says, my biggest concern are those Eagles and filthy Cowboys. Definitely. you definitely want to do that, right? And Paul
and it's not as if we have no chance with Marcus Mariota. We do have a chance.
We do have a chance.
And that said, apparently the word from Dan Quinn today is that they're going to look at maybe Jaden practicing tomorrow. So he's probably going to throw the ball around, and if he can throw the ball around without pain, they at least have to consider playing him Sunday, because he's doing the VR stuff, so that helps him get ready. So and that can't totally replace taking practice reps, but it can help you. So I think we'll all be waiting with bated breath tomorrow to see what happens if he actually does practice or not.
And my man Paul says this. Paul says if he can throw with no pain, he should play. And
I agree with Paul. I do agree with Paul on that.
I agree with Paul on that. If he's throwing with no pain, Paul, even if he's doing his VR stuff with no pain, right, then he should be able to play. But if he feels pain, if it ouchie ooies, hey, guess what? Set him. Because we talked about Montez Sweat earlier. Montez Sweat coming around that corner with Jaden Daniels.
I'm telling you guys, don't play that kid. Let him sit out for the week, get fully healthy. You got a division game on the other side of it.
I agree with you, most. I agree. If Jaden Daniels is not 100%, he sits. He sits. George, thoughts on that?
I mean, I really want to see Jaden this Sunday. And again, I just go back to last Sunday. If it was bad enough that I thought he could miss this week, then he would not have been out there during the game. He would have been going to the hospital. Because, I mean, a strain is no joke, like Mo says, and a cracked rib or a fractured rib is no joke either. So I felt like watching that game, he was frustrated that he wasn't allowed back in, but they were 10-0 up. They thought they could win the game without him, so they kept him out as a precaution. I think if he had to go back in there Sunday, he could have. It would have been a risk, and it's probably a little bit of a risk, even if he's throwing with no pain, to play him on Sunday. Selfishly, I want to see him on Sunday.
I've never seen a fan group that wanted a quarterback so bad, and now a quarterback gets hurt and you want to rush him back out there. I don't understand Commanders fans. You see, this is what I'm talking about. This is why when Commanders are like, it's a game. It's one game.
I know, and that's why I'm not going to be twisted up if he doesn't play. I just look at the way last week went, and I say to myself, if it was bad enough that he could miss, then he should have been going to the hospital instead of coming back out on the field.
I don't know if that hospital point is. I don't think it had to be hospital bad for him to stay at the game. I don't think so. We've seen people with broken ribs stay on. We've seen people with broken ribs stay on the sideline, come back on the sideline before. Kirk Cousins played a whole season with fractured ribs last year.
Yeah. Hey, if this is the NFC Championship, I want him to play.
Yeah, if this is a playoff game, or if this is to get into the playoffs, play. But like, because you know the risk, but like at the end of the day, you had something bigger to play for. Right now, you could take one loss, and if you still handle your division business, like it's not going to matter.
No, that's true. Because let's be honest, it's unlikely that a tiebreaker between the Bears and Commanders are going to make a difference, because the Bears probably aren't going to win the North, and Washington could very well win the East. So in that sense, a tiebreaker between the Bears and the Commanders wouldn't mean anything. It's only going to mean something if either they both win the division or they're both wild cards.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. You guys let us know in the chat, man. Are you ready for Marcus Mariota? And should Jaden Daniels play on Sunday? Let us know in the chat. Mo, let's get us out of here, man.
Hey, man. It's been a dope show, fellas, man. We held it down for Wole in his absence, man. It's going to be interesting to see what decision the Commanders make tomorrow after practice. I know George is going to be all over the press conference to see what's going on. And with that said, man, everybody, listeners, thank you guys for listening to us tonight. I hope you guys are out there subscribing to our podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast platforms. Just search All Burgundy and Gold, everything. That's E, 3 R's, Y, everything. Tweet us at ABG_everything with 3 R's, and hit us up on IG and TikTok at ABG_everything. Same handle. Make sure y'all subscribe to our All Burgundy and Gold Everything YouTube channel and like this video. You are listening to All Burgundy and Gold Everything, powered by the Urban Sports Team, Fox Sports Radio, 96.9 FM in 1340 Hopewell, Virginia. Go ahead and make sure y'all check us out on Sunday pregame.
Yeah, here you go. Last thing, but make sure, don't forget to tune into our pregame show Sunday at 3 p.m. before the Bears and the Commanders game. Right, we'll be right here on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. All right, make sure you hit us up right on X. Sorry, X. Right, hit us up on X. But that's for the pregame, 3 p.m. All right, hey, we out. Peace.